Fine. Okay, 10th class, we're starting with the recapitulation of Bholi. Aditya, we can start now. Now, Bholi is a story written by K.A. Abbas. This is a story which revolves around a little girl whose actual name is Sulekha. Now, Sulekha, in the beginning itself, she has been referred as an unfortunate girl as she fell off the cot when she was very small, because of which there was some kind of brain injury. So her brain was not fully developed. She was not as wise as other children of her age. When she was 3 years of age, she had chicken pox, though the disease was cured, but the poke marks left her body. Poke marks were there all over her body. So she was ugly now, and the girl was not also able to speak properly. She stammered, right? Her speech was not clear. So she was often referred as a simpleton or a fool. So people started calling her Bholi. Fine. Now, the girl was always a target by everyone for not being good looking and intelligent. Her life turns around when she joins a nearby school where her teacher encourages her and help her to become a learned and confident person. So later in the story, we find that due to the circumstances, Bholi has to give acceptance to the marriage with an unequal match, where there was a proposal by an old married lame person. The person was almost of his father's age, but Bholi has to give her acceptance, right, to this unequal match, but rejects it when she sees her father pleading to the bridegroom when he demands dowry. So the story shows the rise of a girl against the social injustice, and the story also conveys the importance of education, the changes which education bring about in a man's or a female's life. So let's start with the summarization of the story. Mridul, please start reading.
The story opens up with the introduction of a little girl named Sulekha. She was called Bholi for her being a simpleton. This was so because some part of her brain had got damaged due to an injury during her childhood. She stammered and had poke marks on her face, which she got when she had a contracted smallpox at the age of 2. She was a laughing stock for everyone. Her father Ramlal was a Nambardar. He had 3 sons and 4 daughters. Bholi being the youngest of all, Ramlal was always worried about her as it seemed impossible to marry her, with her having an ugly face and a dumb mind. When the Tehsildar visited their village to inaugurate the girls' primary school, he persuaded Ramlal to send his daughters to school. Ramlal's wife suggested to send Bholi to school, although she was against sending girl to school because no boy would marry such a girl. She reasoned that as Bholi had no chance of getting married, so she could go to the school. In the beginning, Bholi was frightened to leave her house, but when, for the first in her life, she was dressed up and her hair was washed and oiled, she felt that she was to be visit a better place. In the school, she met a teacher who was very kind and polite to her. She encouraged her to study and speak with confidence. This filled hope in the Bholi and she began to go to the school every day. Years passed and her village upgraded into a small town with some facility like a cotton mill, a cinema and a primary school being converted into a secondary school. One day Bholi's parents decided to marry her to a lame old man who was a widower but was rich and had no demanded any dowry. They thought it to be the best marriage proposal for their dumb daughter and fixed up her marriage. On the wedding day, the bridegroom arrived with the great pomp and show, which filled, which filled Ramlal with joy. The groom discovered that Bholi had pockmarks and demanded dowry in return for marrying her. He demanded a sum of 5,000 rupees. Ramlal begged for mercy and even placed his turban in the Bishambar's feet, but Bishambar Nath did not agree. Ramlal had to give the money in order to save both his family's honor and the daughter's marriage. Bholi could not bear all this and refused to marry a greedy man. People accused her of being shameless. The wedding party returned. The marriage ceremony ended without the Bholi getting married. Her father was surrounded by the grief and said that now no one would marry her and what would she do in future. To this she replied that she would take care of her parents when they grew old and would teach in her school. Her teacher, who was quietly watching all this, felt proud of her decision.
Okay, so this is the story about this girl Bholi. As I told you, because she was considered unfortunate because of her poke marks, because of her not wise enough, because of her problem of stammering, her speech problem. So the girl was just referred as a dumb cow, right? Once now, first of all, we need to understand that the girl, her brought up was in a rural background. She belonged to a village, and her father, though, was a prosperous farmer. He was a nambardar. Nambardar is a position, is a dignified post. So he was a nambardar in the village. Mithil, you can please mute yourself now. So the father was at a dignified position. So the girl here, though she was unfortunate because she had all such problems, she was not taken care of by the family, by the parents, right? Parents were not concerned of her. She had other sisters also. Her eldest sister was married, second eldest was about to get married, and the parents were now looking for a match for the third sister, right? And her brothers were sent to the city to achieve further education. So one thing we understand in the story, that the girl's education was not given importance here. It was only once when a tehsildar comes to the village, as now the village was progressive, a lot of development was there in the village. So once it happened that a tehsildar was there in the village to inaugurate a primary girls' school in the village. So the tehsildar suggested Ramlal, uh, Bholi's father, that because he's at a dignified post, because he's a nambardar, so he should set an example for other villagers and he should send his daughters to school first. Now, Ramlal could not say no to Tehsildar. So Ramlal and his wife, they both decided that Bholi is a simpleton. She is a fool. She's not wise enough. Otherwise, also, it's very difficult to, uh, that somebody would marry her. So it's better to send her to school, because perhaps at that time this was the society structure that people used to believe that if girls are sent to school, then nobody is going to marry them, right? So just to get rid of the girl, just to take off that burden off from their shoulders, the couple Ramlal and his wife, they decided to send Bholi to school. Now, this here, these statements clearly indicate that it was for the first time she was wearing clean and iron clothes, though every time she used to get old clothes of her sisters when they were shrunk, when they were faded, they were passed on to Bholi. But then nobody would bother to even clean her clothes, not even her mother. So she was a leftover kind of a thing in the house, right? So it was for the first time when she was given clean and iron clothes. Her hair were made up. Just it was also not out of concern. That all was done so that that would not bring any kind of shame for Ramlal that her daughter was dressed up in untidy clothes, right? So when Bholi went to school, the first day teacher asked her name. She stammered. She was not able to speak up her name properly, because of which the other children of the class, they mimicked her, they laughed at her. Mimicry is copying somebody in that funny manner. That is known as mimicry. So the children of the class, the girls of the class, they made fun of Bholi. But the role of the teacher here was very crucial. And she was like a blessing for Bholi. When the entire class left, the teacher turned up to Bholi. She spoke to Bholi in that loving, affectionate manner. She asked Bholi's name. Bholi again stammered, but then she uh, patted upon her shoulder, right? And because of the love which she showered upon the girl was able to speak up her name. Teacher was very loving, very kind, and very affectionate towards Bholi. And because Bholi was never, she has never got such kind of affection from anybody, right? She was always scolded. She was, left out kind of a person in the house. So once she received some affection and love from the teacher, she started studying. The teacher helped Bholi to groom, to learn, to educate herself. Now, after some time, there was a proposal for Bholi, and the proposal was from an old man by the name of Bishambar. This man was lame, he could not walk properly, and he was almost of the age of Bholi's father. So we can understand the vices of the society at that time. Young girls were married to old people, right? Girls' marriage was like a burden. Girl was like a burden for the family, and the family always wanted to get rid of that burden. Their education was not at all given importance. Rather, the family believed, the people believed, if girls are going to school, nobody's going to marry them. So now this proposal of Bishambar, the family find the proposal a real good one because Bishambar was a wealthy man, though he was a widower. His first wife had died. He had grown up kids. He was lame. He was old, but he was very wealthy. He had a house. He had a shop. He had good amount of bank balance, and he demanded for no dowry. Because the parents wanted, Bholi gave her acceptance to the proposal, and finally it was the wedding day. Now, on the wedding day, Bishambar, when Bholi picked up the veil of her bridal dress, Bishambar saw poke marks on her face, right? It was at that time when Bishambar decided that because the girl had poke marks, I want a dowry, I want some dowry in the form of 5,000 rupees. So he demanded 5,000 rupees for Ramlal. Ramlal pleaded in front of him, requested him, took up his turban. Turban is actually symbolic of the honor and dignity of a man in Indian society. So he took off his turban and put in front of Bishambar's feet, but Bishamba was not concerned. So finally, Ramlal had to give him 5,000 rupees. So after that, when the garland ceremony was about to happen, garlands were going to be exchanged. Bholi threw off the garland. She took a stand that she was not going to marry that old, shameless, greedy man who was not concerned about his father, about her father, and in front of whom her father had pleaded, but he didn't pay attention to his plead. So here we find that education had brought about a change in this girl. She was now able to face the world boldly. She took a stand for herself. She announced publicly that she didn't want to marry this man. She gave her consent to marry the man just because of her father. And now, because of her parents only, she decided not to marry this man. People around, they called her shameless. People criticized her that they believed that the girl was a dumb cow, but she is really very shameless and all these things. There were talks about her, but she was not concerned. And at that time, when Ramlal asked her that now nobody is going to marry you, what are you going to do? At this, the girl tells that I am going to serve my parents throughout my life. And I'm going to work, I'm going to teach in the same school where I have been taught. On this, she gives a look to the teacher who was standing by the side, and the teacher gives a smiling, satisfying look to the girl as if an artist has completed her masterpiece. So the teacher's masterpiece was Bholi. Because of the teacher's efforts, there was a change in the girl, and this has brought about brought a change in the entire course of life of this simpleton girl whose actual name was Sulekha. But because of her being unwise, she was referred as Bholi, right? So, this is the entire summarization I have given you. Okay, we